Okay, so our speaker tonight is a former city councilman here in San Diego and is the Republican candidate running for Congress in the 52nd District. Running as a new generation Republican, he is in one of the most closely watched races in the country. He has attracted media attention from the New York Times and Fox News. Here to present his Free to Be plan and to help college students and the millennia, USD College Republicans is proud to present Carl DeMaio. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good evening, how are y'all doing?
Good.
So obviously we lured you in here with pizza because I don't think the speech is going to be that great. But I really appreciate you stopping by tonight to hear a little bit about what I'm trying to do to take on my own political party. I'm a Republican. I don't know if you are. I don't particularly care if you are. I really care more about the ideas and issues that face this country and how we can put forward some common sense solutions to how to fix those challenges. I always start out with telling people a little bit about my story, and I kind of can summarize it based on a call I got about 6 or 7 months ago. How many of you know Anna Navarro from CNN, ABC News this week with George Stephanopoulos? She sometimes substitutes on The View. She lost after that Rosie Girl in terms of not the bad one, but the Latina. For a slot on The View this summer. She calls me, and I noticed it was a Miami number, late there, so I'm kind of wondering why someone's calling me like on a Saturday or Sunday. And I pick up the phone, and she says, "Are you for real?" And I said, "Hello, this is Carl DeMaio, and who's this?" And she says, "I don't know, are you for real? I've been waiting for you." And I'm thinking, okay, where am I supposed to be? In Miami, I'm here in San Diego. And she said, in essence, I've been waiting for a candidate like you. And she said, you obviously are in a top target race, one of the maybe 5 or 6 closest, tightest races in the country for the U.S. Congress. And so the Democrats are going to pour money in, the Republicans are going to pour money in, it's going to be a lot of attention. But in particular, there are groups that are going to pour money in against you because they fear you. They know that you challenge the traditional stereotypes. You blow up their way. She knows a little bit about my story. It's been profiled nationally. At age 13, I was taken in by the Jesuits. My mom died from cancer, battled 6 years terminal cancer. My dad left 2 weeks beforehand. He literally walked out on us. My brother, sister, and I were split up. My sister lived on the streets out of her car. First trimester pregnant. She found out she was pregnant a month after my mom died. And she had no health insurance. My brother probably got the worst punishment of the 3 of us. He had to go to a place called DeMaio, Iowa, and live with my grandparents, who were very traditional. They ration out Coca-Cola in little Dixie cups, and that's your reward for the night. Really not a good time for him. But the Jesuits gave me a great opportunity. They gave me a wonderful education. They put me up in a boarding school. And they took care of me to get me through high school, and then I earned a scholarship at Georgetown. When I got there, I had $36 cash in my pocket. I had 2 bags in a box. And I remember seeing parents moving in kids in their big minivans with stereos and TV sets and computers. And they were talking about where they were going to go in Georgetown for their dinner with their family. And I'm thinking, holy cow. This is so foreign to me. I wish I had that. I've got to get to the dean's office first thing, first day of class to take extra credits because my scholarship and my loans would only allow me to do 3 years at Georgetown. I couldn't do a 4-year program. And on top of that, I had no money for health insurance or room and board, so I had to get a full-time job. So I went to the work-study office. I got 2 part-time jobs, and then within about 2 months, I had been able to convince one of them to take me on full-time while taking extra credits. Then in 1998, I started my first company. I remember coming up with this idea. I was working on Capitol Hill at the time, on government oversight, shining a light on how government programs are managed, the money that they're spending, and how they have really cool sounding names like the Environmental Efficiency Program or the Child Welfare Program. And I'm like, okay, this is a pretty cool program, but they had nothing to point to in terms of real measurable results. They had a bunch of staff, a lot of money they were spending, a lot of reports they were issuing, but when it came to saying, well, are you impacting people's lives? Are you actually making a difference? They couldn't tell you. They just said, oh, well, we have a cool sounding name. We really have good intentions here. And so I came up with this idea, what if we started a group called the Performance Institute to go out and measure the impact, measure the results of government programs. Because in government, we're not supposed to make a profit. In the private sector, your outcome is pretty easy. Did you make money or not? In government, it's did you solve a problem? Did you impact people's lives in a positive way? And so I said, we're going to create this company to focus on providing training, conferences, and best practices about how government can improve itself, consulting, and research. And the focus will all be around performance management. How do you do more with less in government? How do you take business practices and apply them for public good? So I put together this business plan, and of course I need money to start the company. So I go to a government agency called the Small Business Administration because I remember hearing they give free grants and loans. There used to be a commercial on late night cable that this guy saying, free money, and he's talking about all the grant program, loan programs in the government. So the SBA, show up at a local SBA office and I say, here's my business plan, and I'd like to get some support money. They said, well, what is your business going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to teach government how to be more efficient. Remember, these are government employees. So they're on the floor laughing. And they're saying, there's no, you got to go work for someone else. Get yourself a real job. And get some experience and then come back. And they go, well, I wasn't going to be told no. So I went to a bank. The bank was Wachovia. At the time, it was only based in Virginia and a couple other states. I walk in. I sit down. Very nice ladies on the other side of the desk. And I picture on my business plan how we're going to start seminars, and if government managers really care about their programs, they're going to want to learn about how to make themselves better managers, and these conferences are going to look around for the best practices in foster care and homelessness and environmental protection, and we'll bring all the practices together, and people will come into a conference and learn and share ideas. And she said, okay, sounds like a great idea. So do you have a home, a house? I said, no, I don't have a house. Do you have a stock portfolio? No, I just graduated college. She said, well, we at this bank, we require lines of credit securitized by assets. That you have to pledge a stock account or your home, cash balance in your bank account for us to give you a line of credit. I remember blurting out, I didn't mean to be offensive. I was like, well, if I had money, why would I be here asking you for money? And she said, well, why don't you go get a job and work for a few years and earn some money and save it the day you can come back and start your company. So I wasn't going to be deterred. I went and opened up 2 credit cards, maxed both of them out, and started the seminars for my company. I remember being so nervous because I went into $25,000 debt, 25 grand of debt. I never imagined that much money. But I was like, hey, I was an orphan, so what can I do? Take my shirt off my back? So I put this money into the seminar marketing. And I remember we had to sell 50 tickets at $500 each to the seminar. And within 4 or 5 weeks, we had sold 500 tickets to the seminar, showing that there's a hunger in government to do more with less, to become better managers, to figure out how others are doing what they're doing and try to learn it, copy it, apply it in their programs. And so I was able to make 200 grand on my first set of seminars, and that capitalized my company. It was more than the line of credit I was asking for. And I started hiring staff, and before I knew it, I went from being a small business of 10 employees to 180 employees. And within 5 years, we had almost 1,000 contractors working for us. People who taught seminars, people who were trainers that would go into programs. And then I started a second company by age 28, focusing on the private sector. I never was interested in private sector management, but I saw these private sector people coming into our seminars like, why are you here? We're focused on government. You're with like IBM. You're with a hospital system. Why are you here? They said, well, we heard you offer really good programs in performance measurement and strategic planning and team building. So I realized I could charge them more for the same product. So I just put a new label on the company and higher price point for the bottle of wine. Same bottle of wine, different label, higher shelf. Then by age 34, I sold both companies and didn't need a job. The reason why I tell you that story is a little bit of kind of how I've always operated. People have said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't start a company. No, you can't, deal with the effects of 9/11 when no one wants to go to seminars because they're too afraid to travel. And I've always said, you know what, we're just going to figure out a way to do it. So in 2004, I started poking around in the city of San Diego and realized that the city was taking our money and giving them to big downtown developers, corporate welfare, and giving them away to government employees in the form of big bonuses, big pensions. We saw these pensions that they were paying out to government employees at age 50. 50 was the standard retirement age for police and fire, and 55 for everyone else. Can you imagine retirement at age 55 is standard? It's a pretty sweet deal. Even worse, you're paid more in many of these positions in your first year of retirement and every year thereafter than your highest base salary working for the taxpayer. And so we found a librarian getting $234,000 a year in annual pension payouts. Government city librarian. I mean, you didn't know that it paid so much to know the Dewey Decimal System. I mean, you guys are studying the wrong areas. Go get a job in the city. And so I said, this is abusive. You're canceling after-school programs in needy areas, needy neighborhoods. You've reduced library hours by 40%. You're telling us that we have to pay more in taxes and fees, and you're paying out our good money in these pensions. You're giving millions of dollars to private sector developers to subsidize profits on condo development towers. What in the world are you thinking about? And so I was willing to take on my own party. I challenged a Republican mayor to either fess up about the financial crisis in the city in 2004 or resign. I remember the Republican Party was like, you can't do that. You can't say that about a fellow Republican. I said, well, I know when he's actually doing the right thing, then he'll get my support. But right now, he's doing wrong by our city. He's not telling the public the truth about what's going on with the financial issues. Fast forward a few years, and people had called us Enron by the city. The city was on the brink of bankruptcy. The guy I'm running for Congress against today was part of that whole mess. He voted for every single one of the bad decisions that put us on the brink of bankruptcy. This is a guy, when you think about who's the Democrat in this race, this is a guy who eliminated daycare programs for needy students. This is a guy who reduced library hours by 40%. This is a guy who voted to do all this stuff while he took $69,000 in auto allowance payments for his BMW. By the way, the guy's worth $100 million. He's the 8th richest member of Congress today. And he turned in the fiscal crisis and said, someone's got to pay for my BMW, and I think that someone is you, the taxpayer. This is a guy worth over $100 million, and he decides to increase his own pension, spike his own pension, and then he took it early. He voluntarily took it early. And so I'm looking at this, and it's like, I'm just pointing out his issues, but they were all doing it. Republicans were doing it, Democrats were doing it, at our expense. And so we put together a nonpartisan, we didn't care about the party label, we just said, these are ideas that can save our city from bankruptcy. We can actually provide better services if we just spend the money more cost effectively. And people didn't think we could do it, but we did. We balanced the city's budget. We got elected to the city council with other reformers. Balanced the city's budget without tax increases, and we actually had money left over to start restoring the services that they had cut in the prior 8 years. We were making government work. And so I absolutely believe that when someone says, no, you can't reform Congress, you're 1 of 435. No, you can't restore the American dream. No, you can't deal with the national deficit without a tax increase. I say absolutely we can. I've done it in San Diego. And yes, instead of billions, we're talking trillions. We can do the same thing. We should never have an environment where we accept mediocrity. We've got a dream. We've got to be bold. We may fall short, but we're going to get a heck of a lot farther down the field if we are aggressive and bold with the leadership approaches that we take. And so, right now, in this election, I'm bucking my party. I'm challenging them to be, number one, positive, solutions-oriented. And the Republican Party, unfortunately, has all too often become the party of no. They vote against things. I want to be the party of yes. I want us to offer bold ideas to the problems facing the country. When you're the party of yes and the party of bold solutions, you also have to tackle all the issues that people care about. I went into a meeting in Washington with a bunch of Republicans, and I said, So, a show of hands, how many of you want to kill the environment, destroy the environment? Show of hands real quick. And no one's hand went up. I said, well, I'm flabbergasted. Because you never talk about the environment. So are your ideas really that bad that you got to keep them a secret? And I'm like, well, no, we got some ideas on the environment. I said, really? Like what? Let's talk about it. Well, I'm sure we've offered bills in the past. It's like, oh no, if you can't even name it today, then how in the world are you telling it to your constituents about how you want to make our lifestyle, our economy more sustainable? And that we don't think that government mandates is the way to do it. We actually think that innovation, technology, entrepreneurship can actually come up with the environmental solutions of tomorrow. How many of you think that technology and innovation can solve our environmental challenges faster than any government bureaucrat writing a rule? Why in the world aren't we talking about innovation, entrepreneurship, new technologies, and getting these technologies to market? You know, they talk about the carbon footprint. Well, if you realize on climate change, carbon footprint, if we eliminated all carbon usage in this country today, like everything's shut down, no carbon emissions, you have to get rid of a lot of cows as well. But you got rid of all the carbon emissions. Do you know what would happen in the next just 8 to 10 years? China and India would more than make up for the elimination of our carbon emissions. And so if we're really going to take this issue and solve it and make substantial progress on it, we've got to talk about innovation and how America can actually sell the next generation of environmentally sustainable products and services around the globe. That's good for our economy, it's great for our environment, and it actually solves the challenge that we're going to face on a global scale. Those are conservative ideas. Those are responsible ideas. Education. That's the same question. When I started running for Congress, the Republicans went to my website and they said, what's this tab on here about education? I was like, well, I think education's important. Well, no, it's not a federal issue, so take that down. You're running for Congress, not state legislature or school board, so you just take that down. I said, well, do you think the economy is an important issue for the federal government to worry about? Well, yeah, of course. You don't think a well-trained workforce is important to our businesses? You don't think, equipping our kids with the skills they need to get 21st century jobs is pretty important? Oh, I guess you have a point. So I said, I'm going to keep it there, and I'm going to be campaigning and talking about my education reform plan. Bold ideas, not just painting in a few colors of the palette of the issues that people care about, but painting in the full spectrum of issues that people worry about. And I think we have pretty good ideas. And we should be offering those ideas in a positive way, not just saying what we're against. Okay, so you got great ideas. Now what are you going to do with them? Second thing that we have to change in the party. We got to look like America. We got to reach out to every single community. We have to go to Latinos, Asians, women, college students, gays, and say, you know what? You may have a preconceived notion of the party, and some of those notions may be factually correct, but we need to change. And so we're here to listen. You can't lead someone until you listen. So what I recommended to the party is show up, for God's sakes. If you can't build trust, if you don't even go into those communities and show up. In 2012, when I was running, I went to Encanto, and a lady, a Latina, came up to me after my presentation, and she said, "Are you Republican?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." I'm thinking, okay, now it gets loud, or something's going to happen here. And she said, "I couldn't believe it. I read that in the paper, but I can't believe it." I said, "Well, why?" I said, "Because you're here. You're in Encanto. No Republicans ever come to mind you." We've been able to win the support of LAPA. Earlier this evening, I was at the Latino American Political Association. They endorsed me in this race. Of Asian American leaders, Filipinos, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese. Because we've showed up. And we're not changing who we are. What I say is, there is far more that unites us than divides us. They want a strong economy. These are entrepreneurs. These are small business owners. They have family-owned businesses. They want to hand down their businesses to their next generation. They got to this country through hard work. So economic issues are more important than anything else. More importantly, tied to that, education. In the Asian community, education is honored. Their kids work hard. Their grades matter. It's a sign of respect to the family. Getting into college, placing well, it's important to them. And so education is important. Again, these are not issues that are dramatically different than anyone else out there. So what I say is, yes, reach out to all communities, but let's focus on the things that we agree on, what unites us, and not focus on the differences. I've been, personally having to deal with this. I'm a gay Republican. I've actually had a little easier time in the Republican Party being gay than being Republican in the gay community. You try, dating in the gay community, and you get past the opening conversation, and they say, "Well, what do you do?" And I go, "Well, I'm a politician." "Oh, great! I love Democrats." Actually, I'm a Republican." "Oh, goodbye, mister. All right, you are not getting laid tonight. You are going on. You are the evil Antichrist. Tear you down." And so, you know what? Part of my campaign, I understand why the national media is focusing on, we have the gay Republican. It's like a zoo exhibit. Let's go take a picture with the gay Republican. Can we feed it? Does it bite? And I'm like, look, if that's what's right in here, I'm going to throw a heavy dose of reform, of bold ideas on the issues that people care about, not these other issues. Because you know what? I want to settle this war. I just want us to establish respect. I want us to establish equality for all, and let's move on. That would be a great day when people can't divide us on the basis of who we are, but rather we can actually focus on the things that we agree on and the solutions to problems that we all face, irrespective of who we love, what our ethnicity is, what our socioeconomic standing was growing up. These are issues that we all have a stake in. I want us to get there. And to do that, I have to take on my own part. I'm more than comfortable doing it. So third, you have bold ideas, you show up in the communities where we haven't been showing up before, so that we are inclusive. The third issue is focus. Focus on fiscal and economic reform. Get off of those divisive social issues. Remember, I was raised by Jesuits. I'm Catholic. And I've been going to a lot of churches as part of our outreach. And what I'm finding is that by going to Latino churches, going to Asian churches, Korean churches, that we worship together, and it gives me an opportunity to talk to them. There's that common bond, and being present in all of their communities. So I believe in religious freedom in this country. But I don't believe that government ought to tell you who you should love. I don't believe government ought to tell a woman what she should be doing with her healthcare decisions. I don't believe that government ought to be spying on your cell phone or your text messages or your email. I want to settle this war, as I said, in the favor of freedom. And that means that we focus on fiscal and economic reform. Now, I was meeting with a rabbi, and he said, "Carl, we love everything you've done on reform, but as a rabbi, I'm curious about your position on gay marriage." I said, "Well, I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise that I support marriage equality." He said, "Well, our faith doesn't teach that." I said, "Rabbi, I understand that, I respect that. And as a member of Congress, I will defend your right to be wrong. I will be the front of the pack, I will be the first to defend any religion, any individual, to make decisions on these issues in accordance with their own personal beliefs, their own faith-based beliefs. That should be left to you to decide. Yes, I support medical marijuana. I don't think the federal government should be involved. Again, this is a unique approach, but I really think that these are issues that are personal freedom issues. They're far bigger issues for us to be dealing with in Washington. And so this third element, I get it. It's going to be a little bit of a change, but I believe that we can be a big tent party by standing up for freedom and saying that, there are some people in our party, we are the party first, there are some people in our party that have different faith-based objections and want to change people's behaviors in certain ways, but they respect that the role of government is not to do that. It should be done through the family, it should be done through religion, it should be done through interpersonal contact, not heavy-handed government. Because a government that can settle the score on a social issue, even if you agree with a specific issue they decide to impose, if you give government that power, what happens when it comes to the day when they settle the score on an issue against your faith-based beliefs, against what you individually feel is right? That's why we have to strike a blow for freedom. We have to maintain that the individual has the right to decide these issues. So we're getting a lot of attention. We have our Free to Be initiative that covers most of this. We just translated it into issues that are a bit more relevant to college students today. I mean, we talk about skyrocketing healthcare costs and why you're paying more for your healthcare under these new mandates that the government has decided. The story I like to tell is that these new mandates require that a 62-year-old grandmother has to get coverage for pregnancy. Government mandate says you, 62-year-old grandmother, have to get coverage and pay for pregnancy services. Boy, if she's getting pregnant at 62, God bless her. I don't know what she's doing. But government thinks that we have to do that. It also says that in your policy today, that you have to be covered for Alzheimer's. Now, I think there's a lot of things that may be causing memory loss with you guys right now, but it's not Alzheimer's. And so, come on. Why is government telling us what to do with our healthcare decisions? Get out of it. Let us have a marketplace that competes for our healthcare dollars. Let's have more decisions made by doctors and patients. That's a healthcare system that we can really see savings in and really see innovation and, of course, more affordability. I want to get both employers and government out of your healthcare decisions. How are we going to do that? Again, Republicans don't really have a very clear healthcare plan. It's just they're saying what they're against. Well, you can't beat something with them. And so what do we want to do in healthcare? We want to make it more affordable, more accessible, and we want to encourage medical innovation. And so let's streamline the FDA. Let's get government regulations cut on medical device companies, on pharmaceutical companies, so they can constantly innovate that next cure, that next form of treatment. In other countries around the globe, they don't have the regulations and restrictions that we have. And so a lot of these American companies are taking their drugs and they're going overseas to actually implement improvement. Let's make sure that you have health insurance companies clamoring for your business. We're not seeing a very competitive marketplace right now. So what I would do is I would actually keep the healthcare exchanges. How many of you have actually been on a healthcare exchange? Have you gone to the website? Healthcare exchange. Okay, 2 people out of this group. How many of you are still in your parents' policy? All right. I would keep the ability to keep you on your parents' policy. I would eliminate pre-existing conditions, because I think that was a good reform that was made in the last bill. What I would do is say, let's light a fire for healthcare companies seeking your business individually rather than your employer's business. Who gets to decide healthcare coverage today? Is it an individual decision or is it an organizational decision? They say we're organizational. Your mom and dad, since most of you are on policies from your parents, they work for someone, and that company says, hey, we went out to the marketplace, we negotiated, and we got ourselves Cigna. And in Cigna, we have a family plan, we have a couples plan, we have an individual plan. So congratulations, here's what we cover. Gee, thanks. Gee, thanks for choosing doctors outside of my traditional network. And now we know in this economy, it's not like the old days, the old generation, where if your dad got a job at Ford, he worked at Ford for 30 years, and then he retired with a Ford pension, and he got the Ford healthcare retirement system as well. No, we're moving around in the marketplace. We're getting jobs every 2 to 3 years. The fastest growing segment of our economy right now is self-employed. These are people who don't work as an employee for a company. They are 1099 employees. They have their own small business. So what we're seeing is an environment where the old model of healthcare is broken. Government's coming through saying, well, we're just going to mandate that you have to buy it one way or another, and we're going to tell you what's in it. Our approach is let's innovate, let's break through the old models, let's make this healthcare system, for the first time ever, truly individual-based. So I'm going to keep the exchanges, but I'm going to privatize how they're managed. I don't think government should be managing websites. We should have a market doing the exchanges. And I'm going to pass a law that says that anytime your mom and dad get a policy, or if you get a job working for a company and they say, here's Cigna, here you go, congratulations, here's Cigna, here's what your copay is, you can take that policy to an exchange and convert it for cash value and buy another policy you're choosing. I don't want your employer to be the one to make the decision. I want healthcare companies lining up outside your door, constantly sending you mail, like credit card companies. Hey, you can get another card. I want them constantly saying, I've looked at the policy you're in, Cigna policy A, and I've got an Aetna policy B, or I've got a Kaiser Permanente policy C, or Blue Cross Blue Shield. I want them coming to you, not your employer. I want them coming to you. And then while we're at it, we're going to make sure that people who are self-employed don't get penalized for getting health insurance. Because right now, if you're self-employed, you're taxed on every dollar of your health insurance. If you're in a business, you get to write it all off. That's not very fair. And so our plan can be individual choice, competition, and innovation. That's what can totally transform this healthcare system. And that's just the start, my friends. There is no limit to what we do if we get past the arguments of both political parties and say, well, maybe there's a third issue or a third approach that we haven't been talking about. All right, I'm going to shut up. My hope is that you have some good questions. More importantly than that, if you are, and we're not going to agree on 100% of issues, okay? You know, if you agree with someone 100% of the time, you really need to clarify. Most politicians want to speak in code and mushy language so that you think you agree with them, but guess what? You really may not agree with them, or they may not vote the way you thought you heard they were going to vote. And so I try to be blunt, candid, direct, clear. You're never going to agree with someone 100% of the time, but I hope that we agree at least 80% on these issues. And more importantly, if you really want to make a difference, I'm hoping that you'll be inspired to either volunteer for the campaign in the next 56 days, or you might be willing to get a full-time or part-time paid position with our campaign, because we offer both. Internships, unpaid volunteer, unpaid internships. Volunteers are basically, hey, come in once, great, happy to have a couple hours. Or intern more regularly. We've actually passed out materials with that information. Or we have paid positions, and that's a little bit more structured, requires a little bit more, but they are pretty fun. So let's open it up to questions and comments. Don't be shy. Yes, ma'am.
You said that you want to do a healthcare policy where people can cash out their healthcare whatever they have. Are you worried that people might not actually buy another plan and just take the cash?
No, what I would be doing is taking a health insurance policy and the way that you redeem and get your cash equivalent, and it would be on the exchange when you're buying another policy. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are making the competition at the individual level. And I want to see health insurance companies lining up for your health dollars. And then it allows you to customize. You know, I want to use my healthcare stipend that I'm getting from my company, and I want to keep my provider network. And so, you know, moms typically select the doctors for the kids, and they really like their family doctor, and mom or dad gets a new job. Suddenly, the doctor that the kids have come to know and love is no longer the provider network. And that happens all the time. Let's allow mom to say, I want to choose a plan, another healthcare company that still keeps us in provider network, that allows us to still continue to see the doctor. Here's another thing that this program, I think, will unleash in the marketplace. We're now moving to an environment where people are placing an emphasis on wellness programs, and healthcare companies will be more invested in your health if they know that you're probably going to stick around for a while. And so they'll be bugging you about preventative maintenance and checkups and whatnot. So I think it'll allow us better continuity for wellness programs, and so that your healthcare provider knows more about what you have been able to do thus far, and be more incentivized to offer wellness programs to you. Yeah, in the back.
What are some lessons that you learned on your run for mayor 2 years ago that you're using to help you run your current campaign?
Lesson number one, never underestimate your opponent's ability to lie. And just make things up out of whole cloth. And that's what we're seeing right now in this race, unfortunately. The other issue is the national brand. So we were leading in the 2012 race until the Obama wave in the last 72 hours. And those last few voters, last 5 or 6 percentage points of voters, voted straight party line. And what it told me is that for low information voters that don't really know about the actual local race or the candidates running or the issues in a local race, when they just look for the brand, they come in with preconceived notions. And what people thought, in many cases still today, I think the brand suffers, the Republican brand, is it's a party of no, it's not inclusive, and it's too fixated on divisive social issues. And so those are the three issues I talked about, in terms of challenging my own party and transforming my own party so that we are productive again, and that the brand can get past some of the problems of the past. Those are the two issues I learned. I think we're doing a great job transforming the brand here, because it's for a more localized race in this district. People are very engaged. But I can't do anything about my opponent taking pages out of Bob Pilner's book. Yeah.
So I was on your website today, and I read a little something about just your view on Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
And basically, my understanding, you don't support big cuts to Medicare. You don't want to lose the funding for that, but at the same time, it is taking up a large amount of money. So how exactly do you make that work without?
This is a very similar question to what I faced when I got into City Hall. I had the voice of San Diego. I like to pick on them because they tend to think that they know everything about everything, and then they don't see beyond their own computer screens. I remember Scott Lewis saying, "You need to put forward a plan. What tax are you going to increase, and what programs are you going to cut if you're not willing, if you're not willing to raise taxes, what programs are you going to cut to balance it?" I said, wait a minute, I think that's a false choice. You're saying either I raise taxes or I throw grandma under the bus. I don't think that that's the only choices that we have. And that's why I think the debate in Washington is stale, toxic, and unproductive. Because both sides continue to do this. Raise taxes or throw grandma under the bus. And I don't think that's the right choice. I want to transform how we're providing the service so that we don't cut the benefit, the service that they're receiving, but we make that service more affordable so that we can stretch the dollar.
So
How do we do that? How do we do that? I just spent a good amount of time talking about healthcare reform. Medicare is the largest healthcare program in the country. If we make healthcare more affordable across the board through reform, not only will healthcare be more affordable to the American worker, but it will also be more affordable to who? Medicare. What neither party has really done is come up with a plan for making healthcare more affordable, for bending the cost curve in healthcare. And so in the city of San Diego, they said, well, you know how much it costs to do a library hour? It costs X. I said, well, you know what you're doing is you're fully loading in all the bureaucracy. You're fully loading in those lavish pensions at age 50. You're fully loading in all the overtime. You're fully loading in, by the way, the fact that our budget is paying out to subsidize developers right now. And so I actually believe that by changing how we operate as a city, by reforming these things, the library hour won't cost that much. It'll be that minus 30%. And that's how we restore services in the city. So I actually believe that we can save Medicare. We do not have to reduce Medicare benefits. We can improve the cost efficiency of healthcare in this country, and that's where our focus ought to be, is reforming healthcare. And then Medicare will benefit from that through savings, as well as the American worker. That's a sustainable healthcare reform plan. Yeah, another question.
So would you, with that, would you support, taking away some regulations so that greater innovations can be made in medical fields?
Absolutely. The question is, how do we achieve the cost savings? And again, I gave an example of medical device companies and pharmaceuticals cutting the red tape there. How about lawyers? I don't want doctors to be engaged in preventive defensive medicine. I want them in preventive medicine. When I stopped my race for mayor in November of 2012, I went into hibernation. It was soul searching and like, oh my God, how did they elect Bob Filner? I mean, this is terrible. And so I kind of withdrew and canceled a bunch of appearances and schedules. And I noticed about January that my arm, right here, my elbow started hurting a bit in the morning. And then by February, it was so bad that I couldn't even lift my cell phone off the nightstand in the morning. It was so painful. I remember I was at Costco and I walked up and he shook my hand. I was like, ow, it hurts. So I went to the doctor. The doctor said, oh, I know what's wrong with you. I said, well, what? I said, you got a politician arm. You've been shaking so many hands in the fall that your muscle developed. And then when you stopped doing that, and let me guess, you stopped working out, you stopped your bicep curls. I was like, yeah, I stopped my bicep. I thought I hurt myself with bicep curls. He said, that was the wrong thing to do. You need to actually work out your arm more. And that's why I'm running for office again. I need to shake my hands. But he gave me a brace, a $5 brace from Costco. And he said, take some Tylenol and ibuprofen. If you combine it together, you can do that. And here's exercise 3 times a day with a bowl of quarters. You'll be just fine. He said, now, I'm ordering up an X-ray of your elbow. I said, well, why? I'm on a health savings account. That's going to cost me money. Well, what's up? He said, well, on the off chance you have a tumor, I need to get an X-ray. Just check the box, make sure you don't have a tumor. Well, I said, well, do you think I have a tumor in my elbow? He said, no, you have a politician arm. I know you do. But my insurance carrier, liability insurance, says if I don't do this, then they'll rob me. They can randomly audit me, and I've got to make sure that I protect myself against a lawsuit. We need tort reform in this country so that our doctors are doing the best that they can. Here's another one. My sister runs a hospice, and she has a doctor on call. Hospice is for people who are dying. It's very dependent upon nurses. Nurses do the heavy work of the hospice. But they do have doctors, and she said that a lot of her doctors want to use technology to chat with the patient instead of going out for a visit. Telemedicine. We can do that right now. It's Skype, on the cell phone. The nurse is there, the doctor asks some questions, and voila. The doctor can prescribe or make decisions. If there are visits needed, then they can actually schedule a visit. But my sister said, that Medicare doesn't even allow us to go for that. And so my doctors are saying if I'm going to make money, I've got to actually physically show up. So I'll do 10 patients today to actually make money versus doing 30 patients and 2 patients, 30 patients using technology and 2 patients in person. 32 versus 10. Huge savings if we embrace technology and change the way that we do billing in healthcare. They say about 30% to 40% of every healthcare dollar spent in this country is wasted. Sounds to me like we can save a lot of money with reform without touching even one benefit for people that need it. So when going back to the Voice of San Diego, I remember they just beat me mercilessly in you don't have a plan, you either have to raise taxes or cut services or both. We defeated the big tax increase, and then 2 days later, I pulled the rabbit out of the hat, which was a 350-page budget that actually balanced without tax increases and actually restored services. And of course, they thought it was their idea, which is fine. I don't care about the credit, just get it done. In Washington, the same thing is going to happen. We are going to be able to meet our obligations to our seniors, and we're going to be able to provide better services if we focus on the root cause of problems, which is the need for reform, the need to start spending our money more wisely. Yes, sir.
Do you think that you are part of a greater movement in the Republican Party, in that in the next Congress there will be more Republicans or congressmen that share your platform?
Do I think that this is a movement? Absolutely. I think that the movement has already started to happen. I think the party has started to shift. And you are all part of that movement. I'm counting on it. Because when you take a look at polling amongst younger Americans, first of all, they're not Democrats. They're sure as heck not Republicans. But they're not Democrats. They're none of the above. They're disgusted with both parties. They figured this out really early. That both parties have not been offering us what we need. And so I think I am part of a movement that is happening in this country. The politicians are the ones that are behind the 8-ball on it. The fastest growing party in this country is the Independent Party. The none of the above, decline the state. That's what this district is also very much reflective of. And so I believe that we can take our party back to its original roots of standing up for freedom and limited government in all aspects, not just in the fiscal aspects or economic aspects, but in our basic freedoms. And I was very satisfied with the primary here in San Diego. How many of you were here in May for the primary? So the national right-wing groups decided to put in a Tea Party candidate against me, a social conservative, a Marine, and they poured $700,000 in to support him. $700,000. And they sent out nasty mailers. One of the mailers said, "Who do you trust to defend your children in our country?" There's a picture of a Marine. decorated Marine, and then a picture of me, dressed as a Roman soldier holding a sword. Carl DeMaio likes to dress up at costume parties. You know the inference and the implication. But on election night, Sandy said, this is baloney. Republicans went for me, and independents went for me. And I was proud of what the message was that night. And I think we're going to have the same thing. You have Scott Peters, who's out there not offering positive solutions on the economy, on fiscal issues. Instead, he's focusing on these divisive, rhetoric attacks. Just name call. If you call your opponent enough names, hopefully he'll stick. Isn't that what is the root cause of the broken system in Washington? I think that's pretty extreme. If you have a member of Congress who's willing to bend and distort the truth and do nothing but name call, isn't that pretty extreme? And so we're hopeful that with your help, we can send a national message. And that's ultimately a choice that you have to make is, do you want to be part of shaking things up and setting a more inclusive voice, a more positive approach to Washington? That's what we have going on right here. Not many seats are as close as this one's going to be. Yes, sir.
Given that student debt is kind of rising pretty quickly now, I'm wondering why you supported in the past cutting Pell Grants.
I do not support cutting Pell Grants. What I do support is making sure that our student loan programs take every dollar that we have and make them more efficient. I think you're referring to the distorted attack from the Democrats and my opponent regarding the program assessment rating tool and how we evaluate federal programs. And what PARC tried to do, and I still believe this needs to be done today, is that you look at programs that have similar missions and you say, which one of these programs is working better? And how do we make this program the most effective it can be? Look, I think that we would expect that of our own money if we were buying something in the private sector. I think we would insist on that if we were investing money in a charity that they show results. And in government, we ought to hold government programs accountable for results. And so I've put out a program proposal to make student loans more flexible so that you're able to refinance student loans at lower interest rates. Right now you have a system where you have to pay the higher interest rate no matter what. That's how the system was set up. Right now we're not allowing community banks and our credit unions to offer student loans. Why not open up the system to more competition? And then, of course, for skill sets that we really need, community service. I know that we have some programs for the military and public service where we already do this, but perhaps even nursing. Maybe we change the repayment terms so that it's a percentage of your income in those positions versus a flat principal plus interest fee. There's all sorts of things that we should be doing in student loans to make it more flexible, more affordable. The system right now actually encourages graduates to go into default because there's no flexibility for repayment plans. And those are the things that I want to start adding into the system so that we can make college more affordable. I'm also planning to reform pensions in the California state school system. And so we'll see savings in tuition and how universities operate there. Something that Scott Peters proposes. Yeah.
Just curious, aside from the tax code reform, what are your plans for making it easier for college graduates to enter the workforce or increasing jobs?
The four legs of the stool. Economic reform. We have to have a tax system that's fair, where people pay a fair share. But right now you have big businesses that get a disproportionate benefit in our tax system. They get tax subsidies, they have loopholes, and the small businesses and working families are hurting. And so I want to create a tax system that is based around simplicity for small business, simplicity for working families, simplicity for the self-employed individual. And a flatter, fairer tax system, I believe ultimately is better for business and will create better jobs. Second, once you have money in a tax system to invest in your economy, you need to cut the red tape on how to operate a business or start a small business. Slicing through red tape, reducing mandates. Again, big business has an advantage here. Big business has compliance departments. They can afford, because of their size, extra regulation. They can afford new mandates. They just absorb it. They pass it on to you, the consumer. And they got legions of compliance staff, lawyers, accountants, etc. And so what I'm proposing is we need to change it so that we cut red tape that benefits the small business. I want to see the next Apple start in this country, the next Microsoft, the next Google. But it's harder and harder because unless you're a big guy, the system is stacked against you. Third, education. And that's where it's, we want to make sure that K through 12 education provides our students with basic skills. And that we encourage trade schools, college programs, not just 4-year degrees, but 2-year degrees, advanced degrees. That we look at online education opportunities, that we look at internship programs. We need to figure out different paths to getting people the skills that they need, and it should be all of the above approach. And finally, economic infrastructure. If you have a good tax system, if you have red tape that's been cut through, if you have a well-trained workforce because of a good education system, you need economic infrastructure like a third border crossing down in San Diego, like a strong report for trade, expanded transportation infrastructure, broadband access. All these things are the economic infrastructure that we can invest in that will allow for businesses to flourish. Those 4 things are not easily accomplished, but if you have bills and proposals that deal with those 4 issues, a rising tide lifts all boats. One last comment, question. Yes, right in the back.
Okay, so a lot of what you discussed involving, making things more efficient, that obviously frees up some more income, as you've shown with the city and all that. If you were to take that to the national level, and maybe trim things down, get things more efficient, have, I guess, a little bit more disposable income for the government, you talk a lot about innovation. I'm curious about this because you're identified with the Republican Party. I wonder if this would upset the party and how you feel on it personally. Would you support the government subsidizing some of these innovative things, or do you believe that's overstepping government's boundary?
I think the best way to subsidize innovation is get the heck out of the way and stop choking it, stop killing it. Cutting the red tape is so important to us. And so I'm going to be looking at every single nook and cranny in the budget, every single element of the tax code, and figure out how we can reform it. But ultimately, our best leap forward will come by getting out of the way. There's so much pent-up entrepreneurship, ideas, great ideas in this country. I talk to so many people who say, I want to start a company, here's my idea. I say, okay, so what are you going to do? Well, I can't get financing. I'm like, yeah, then they're going to got the t-shirt. And, it's really hard to compete with the big guys. And, I don't know if people have disposable income enough to buy my product. Those are all holding back innovation. And so we need to start getting the economy revitalized again. And the best way to do that, again, is through the economic proposals that I talked about. I'm less concerned about, what do you do to write a tax code to subsidize this, that, and the other thing, than concerned about getting out of the way of where the market can go on its own. Free markets. I ultimately believe that even though free markets sometimes have flaws, that free markets solve problems faster than any government, politician, or bureaucrat, or rule setter can possibly imagine. And I would actually argue, if you take a look at some of the regulations today, that they're holding us back from making progress on the very issues that they claim to want to fix. It's time for us to set aside the labels. It's time for us to say, I don't care if it's a Democrat idea or a Republican idea, I'm not here to blame. I'm here to see how we can solve problems, fix things, transform the political system that we've seen thus far. And so, again, if you want to join us, we got a great team. You're going to be drinking from a fire hydrant because there's so much activity going on right now, so many people coming in from around the country. And of course, as a member of the team, there's a volunteer, intern, or part of our paid staff, you certainly will be part of going to all of those events and having a ringside view of what's going on. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot of time for some of the basic entry volunteer positions, but I'm hoping that you will be willing to do something in the next 56 days to help us win. Thank you so much.